Hey, before we get rolling, I just want to talk to you if you're here for the first time, or maybe you're joining us online because you're kind of like trying it out before you show up and you want to know about this group of people. What's this group of people like? Who are we? That kind of question. I want you to know that this is not a group of people that used to be people like you. And we're not a group of people who like just put up with people like you or tolerate people like you. And we are not a group of people who try to fix or change people like you. And the reason is because we are a group of people just like you. We are a group of people, every one of us are real and open and honest about the fact that we've got messes in our story. We've got weeds in the garden, right? We've got parts of our lives that we're like, oh, I just don't want you to notice that part of me, that part of my burden, that part of my sin, that part of my story, whatever it is. And that's really the reason why we take on heavy and difficult topics for us, like our mental and emotional health, because this group of people has a mess going on. We offer roses in hopes that you don't notice the weeds that are growing in the garden. That's how we all deal with those things. We give you what's shiny and happy and smiley in hopes that you don't see the mess. But the reality is around here, we're real and open and honest about the fact that we all got messes, right? We're just real about that. I've got messes in my life. A few weeks ago, we launched into this series. We started talking about this, and I explained to you that it really is a 2.5-hour talk that Chris and I have divided up into little parts, maybe 25, 35 minutes apiece, where we could kind of walk into it. But it's really one continuous story about us finding hope and health in our life. And the reason that we talk about that, the reason that we talk about mental and emotional health in church is because it is critical. It is a critical part of what Jesus wants for you when he said he wants to give you life. How can we experience the full and complete and rich and satisfying life that Jesus wants for us when we're stuck behind our story, right? When we're stuck behind our pain and our insecurity, our depression, our anger, our anxiety, when we're stuck in an emotionally crippling place in our story, how can we ever experience what Jesus wants? It is part and parcel to what Jesus died to give you is life. In fact, one of my favorite verses in the Bible is John chapter 10, verse 10, where he says, the thief, that's the enemy, that's the devil, he comes to steal and kill and destroy. If you've ever lived behind a wall of anxiety, if you've ever lived as a slave to your anger, if you've ever lived crippled by your insecurity, riddled with depression, then you know what it's like to have life stolen and killed and destroyed. But Jesus said, I came so that you could have life, right? He says, a rich and satisfying life. Most of the time when Christians talk about this stuff, we start talking about heaven. And yes, Jesus wants us to go to heaven, but he wants to give us life now. So our emotional health, our mental health is a critical part of the life that Jesus came to give us. He steals back what the enemy has stolen. We will rush the gates of hell with squirt guns at this place because we care about you finding life. The first week I told you that we were just going to unpack that stuff. We talked about our survey, our story, the results of stuff that you and I put on our survey that we did of our people, and almost 400 of you answered those questions, told us about stuff. We talked a little bit that day about anxiety, because 70% of us, the most substantial emotional struggle we have in the last 3 months was anxiety. And then last week, Chris kind of unpacked how anxiety flows over into our anger, right? It gives us that either fight or flight. It gives us that like push in or run away thing. And I love this quote that I picked up from Chris. And it really is quite simple, if I can get it to change. Before we go off or before we run off, we have to ask ourselves, what's off? Like, what's wrong? Why am I wanting to snap? Why am I wanting to retreat? Why am I wanting to push in and get mad? And why is it I want to withdraw from people? Like, our anger is part of all of our lives. It's the overflow of our mess. And we've got to ask ourselves what's off. So valuable. Today, we're going to talk about what might be at the root cause of all that for us. Like, the reality is that you may or may not notice your anxiety going up and down. You may just kind of blame it on the circumstances of life. You might think that your anxiety is a clinical thing. You might think it comes from one place or another, like it might be coming from there. And that's true, right? And you might see it like, hey, I didn't realize my anger is because of my anxiety level. I get more angry when I get more anxious, you know? You might see those things. I want to offer to you that there might be an issue with our insecurity in all of our lives. On the survey, it was the third most significant thing that we're struggling with in the last 3 months. In the last 12 weeks, right? 12 weeks, just a few months. About 50% of us, 48% of us said that we struggled most with insecurity more than any other emotion. That's a big deal, right? Now, what that means is that 52% of us said we don't struggle with that the most. That doesn't mean we don't struggle with it, just it's not the most significant one, right? But here's the thing I would say is that I bet that number is strikingly low. I bet you don't even realize how often and how loudly the voice of insecurity speaks into your life, and so true into my life. The voice of insecurity may very well be in my life the loudest voice in the whole story. Now, I'm going to show you a few things that my friend Chad, you might call him Chad GPT. That's what I call him. I gave him a name because we have a personal relationship, me and Chad. And I asked Chad, like I said, hey, what are the most common ways that insecurity shows up? And man, as soon as they popped up that list, I'm like, oh, wow. I didn't realize how much time I spent dealing with my own insecurity. Look at what these top things saying. Overcompensating, right? Getting loud when I should be quiet. Pushing in. Yeah. Touting my own resume, my own significance. Constant comparison is often insecurity expressing itself. I compare my life or my successes to the lives and successes of others. Instagram, anybody? Facebook? Real life, like where we live in comparison to what other people have or don't have or experience. People pleasing, that's me all day, right? I want to make you happy so that I'm happy. If you're happy and I feel like, man, that's a good thing, that's just my insecurity speaking. Withdrawal or isolation, sometimes when I'm insecure, I'm like, oh, I don't want to be around those people. They make me feel like I'm smaller or less than. So I tend to withdraw. Defensiveness. Somebody says, hey, you could do this better, and I get angry and buck up, right? Wow. Perfectionism. Seeking constant reassurance. Can you do this? Can you change that? Can you work this out? Am I good enough? Do I have what it takes? Can you tell me that I'm good? Can you remind me how strong I am? Can you just feed into my ego a little bit? Controlling behavior. I told you Chad GPT and I have a relationship because when I asked that, I think he just started reading my mail and said, here's where your insecurity speaks. My guess is that when you started reading that, you went, oh, yeah, I guess I do probably struggle with insecurity more than I thought because I do a lot of overcompensating, or I'm a perfectionist, or I lean into people pleasing. I get that. And can I just say this to you? You're not alone. You're not alone in this room. You're not alone in this world. You're not alone in the Bible. You flip through Scripture and you'll see countless examples over and over and over again of people who dealt with their insecurity by doing these things, right? I mean, you see, like I was just thinking, like a constant comparison. Cain and Abel. Cain compared to his sacrifice to Abel, right? Abel's sacrifice is better, this thing. It gets all this kind of tension. People pleasing. Pilate stood before a whole crowd of people, and he knew full well that Jesus was innocent. And he's like, these people really want Barabbas, and I don't want to make them mad, right? Let his insecurity speak louder than his conviction. Right? I mean, looking through these things, withdrawal, isolation, we see people all the time like Gideon running to the threshing floor and hiding out. Defensiveness, people putting up fronts all throughout Scripture. We see it over and over. Perfectionism. Remember the rich young ruler? He spent all of his time compensating for his insecurity by keeping the letter of the law. I got to do this because if I do the right thing, then I'm right with God. But God's going, hey, I love you even when you don't do the right thing. I love you anyway. We see these stories over and over again. Now, if I was going to be honest with you, if we're going to just look at something that's big in our lives, we'd look at insecurity. And what kind of reminded me of that for my life is that I usually think about, man, I deal with insecurity, but it's because I'm weak. You ever felt that way? Like you feel like if you say, yes, I'm insecure, that you're saying you're weak. And I don't think that's true. When I start seeing this, I see this in our lives, right? And can I just say this? When you're overcompensating or you're in constant comparison or you're living in people-pleasing mode or you're a perfectionist, the rest of us see it too. And we're not pointing fingers at you because this is not a sign of weakness. Insecurity is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you're a human person. In fact, this is what I was thinking, is that insecurity isn't a niche issue for the weak and the fragile, right? It's a human issue, and it affects all of our lives. It affects the way that we live, right? The way we lead people, the way we love people. Insecurity is a voice in every one of our heads. It is a mental or emotional struggle for all of us. There's nobody in here, not one single person, no matter how big chested we can get, right? No matter how much we overcompensate, no matter how much we deal with it, there's not one single person who doesn't hear the voice of insecurity in their lives. And that is why we talk about it, because it's in everybody's story. Now, listen, if I were to do another survey and ask you another question today, I'd say, hey, name the very first person in the Old Testament that you can think of. Name the very first character that comes to mind, right? Yesterday, I have a friend who's a Jewish doctor, and he's here in town, and I saw him at the cigar shop, and I said, hey, Doc, tell me the first Hebrew character that comes to your mind from what we call as Christians the Old Testament, and he calls the Torah. He says, well, I guess it'd have to be Abraham, right? His whole story comes from Abraham. That might be yours, right? I bet a lot of you would say Moses, because you're like, Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Moses parted the seas and carried people out of Egypt. You probably say Moses. A lot of us probably would say David. David is the first one to come to mind, right? I love David and Goliath. I love those stories of David's kingship. I know that there's parts of my life where I'm I identify with David's life and leadership and even his failure. But can we just say this? One of the characters that probably not a lot of us would mention as the first person to come to mind is the person whom, if we didn't have his story, we wouldn't have David's story. If we didn't have Saul, then we wouldn't have had David's story. If Saul's story didn't go the way it did, then David's story wouldn't have happened. And Saul's story has the same voice of insecurity that every one of us feel. Now, before I tell you Saul's story, I got to give you a little background. God said, hey, I want to be your king. But Israel's like, hey, no offense, Big G, right? No offense, God. But we want a king like all the other people have a king. We want a king who sits on a throne, wears a cool crown, has a scepter, I don't know what they had at the time. But we want a king like everybody else has a king. All the neighboring nations have a king. And that's what we want for us to have a king. And God's like, I want to be your king. They're like, nah, we're good with having a person king, right? And so God said, okay, fine. Have it your way, do your thing. So he decided to let them choose a king. And they did not do a really great job of choosing a king. They didn't look around and go, let's look at that guy. He's got some leadership capabilities. They didn't look at a person and go, oh, you know what? Let's talk to that guy because he's got some experiences that I think would really lend well into managing our economic status. They didn't make a rational thought, right? They didn't interview people or kind of work it out. In fact, the most reasonable thing that they could come up with is the least reasonable reason to have to elect or to choose someone as king. Look at what it says in 1 Samuel chapter 9, verse 2. It says this. He says, Kish, that's the community, right? They had a son named Saul, right? This family has a son named Saul, as handsome a young man as could be found anywhere in Israel. And he was a head taller than everybody else. Now listen, the Jewish people are not known to be they're not like, these are not basketball players, right? There's not a lot of Silvermans in the NBA, right? There's not a lot of, because they're not known that way. So they like go, hey, we feel less than as a people. And so they literally look up to Saul because he's a head taller than everybody else. He makes them feel significant because they look up to him. So they chose him, right? In fact, just a little bit later, it says this in the next chapter. He says, when he stood among the people, that's Saul, he was a head taller than any of the others. Samuel said to all the people, do you see the man that the Lord has chosen? And you know what they were like? There is no one like him among all the people. The people shouted, long live the king, right? Not long live the best choice. Not long live God's man, right? Not long live what we've been praying about or what we researched. Long live the tallest and best looking dude we can find, right? Crazy way to choose a king. And what's even worse about it is, as significant as he was in their eyes, Saul was really insignificant in his own eyes. The single greatest voice in Saul's life was his insecurity. It screamed in his ear every single day. And even though the Israelites chose him as king, and he should have maybe felt that as like some sort of like bolster of his ego, right? It didn't work out that way. In fact, Saul's story is riddled with stories of his insecurity. Even though he was so significant, he saw himself as insignificant. And he lived out of it, right? It affected, like it does for us, the way he lives and leads and loves, right? And so he started leading out of his insecurity. God told Saul through Samuel to say, hey, listen, there are these people, the Amalekites. They live in a community called Amalek. The Amalekites are opposing Israel, and God wanted to exact absolute destruction on the Amalekites. Now, listen, that's not an easy story to read, right? I mean, it's tough to hear that when God says, I want you to lay waste to the joint, right? I want you to go in and leave nothing standing. In fact, that chapter 10, it says this is now, go and attack the Amalekites, right? God tells Saul, go and attack the Amalekites and get these people and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Don't leave anything, right? Houses, like chariots, whatever they've got, lay waste to it. Don't take it, kill it. Then he says, don't spare them. Put to death men and women and children and infants and cattle and sheep and camels and donkeys. I told you it's hard to read, right? I told you what God's direction to Saul was really hard to read. And I don't know exactly what's going on, to be honest with you. Commentators are all over it. Some of them are like, listen, we don't know what it is the Amalekites did to get God's judgment pointed at them like this. We don't know their story. We don't know how long they've been rejecting God. We don't know what's going on in their life. All we read is this part. And we go, I don't understand that. And can I just say that there are a lot of things that God does that I don't understand, but he's in control, I'm not. He's all-knowing, I'm not. He is sovereign, I'm not. I have to admit that. And then there's the second part of it. Like I look at this and I go, man, I don't understand that. But maybe God knew something about not just their past and their story. He knows our hearts, doesn't he? So he knew the hearts of the Amalekites. And God said, listen, whatever's going on, it's wicked. And I want to eradicate it. Because let's just face this in our lives too. This is important. The only solution to wickedness is eradication. We can't tolerate and manage, and when wickedness is in our lives, we cannot tolerate it. And that's how God was with the Israelites. He's like, look, if we don't eradicate this wickedness, it will always be a problem. And can I just say this? It always turned out to be a problem. In fact, one of the biggest problems that the Israelites faced for years to come comes from this story, because Saul decided he didn't want to obey completely. Like he kind of obeyed, right? He goes in and they took a whole bunch of people. I'm not going to waste a ton of time going over the detailed story. Took a ton of soldiers in, and they just go buck wild, right? They defeat the place, right? They do most of what God tells them to do. But then they bring back like some stuff. Instead of laying waste to it, like they said, like just destroy it, like God told him to, he kind of goes, well, I captured the king, bring him back, makes me feel significant. I captured a king, look at my trophy, right? He brings back a whole bunch of really good stuff. Like he brings back the stuff that means something to him or that they're valuable. And he brings all that stuff back. And God tells Samuel about it, this prophet. And Samuel goes directly to Saul. He walks up to Saul and he's like, hey, I'm hearing an awful lot of sheep over here. I thought God said to lay waste to everything. Don't bring anything, like all the cattle and the sheep and the camels and donkeys. Why are all the goods here and all the bad? And what's up with this king from Amalek? Like, what's up with you keeping him around? And Saul's like, well, listen, like we did this and, like I went and got this is good stuff. He didn't make a good rational choice, right? He didn't say, well, Samuel, I was thinking about it from an economic standpoint, and I figured it was better to bring these sheep back and sell them and use the spoils of it to further the kingdom of Israel. He didn't make an economic decision. He didn't make a rational decision. He didn't say like, oh, it's just more logistically reasonable to do this. It was a better use of our time. He didn't make a moral decision. He didn't say, I just really felt bad about killing the king and these animals, and animals didn't do nothing. He didn't make any of those choices. What Saul said was that like, hey, the guys wanted this stuff, right? He makes excuses first. He's like, we're going to make a sacrifice and Samuel's like, not buying it. He's like, well, listen, the guys just all thought this, and I wanted to please them. His people-pleasing chimed in. And I love what he says, what Samuel says to him. He says, listen, I want you to know he says, stop. Listen to what the Lord told me last night. Saul was like, what did he tell you? Saul asked. And Samuel told him, this is such a powerful phrase. Although you may think little of yourself. Chosen because he's a head taller, chosen because he's the best looking, chosen as the king of Israel. He's the leader of the whole nation of Israel. They all look to him and are obligated to do what he says. And he's like, listen, although you may think little of yourself, another translation says, although you are small in your own eye. And that's a pointed finger God puts into his fractured, insecure ego. Such a true thing for us too, isn't it? Although you're small in your own eyes, he says, are you not the leader of the tribes of Israel? Where does your identity come from? Does it come in what you think of yourself? Or does it come in what God thinks of you? Like, this is such a big, important thing. The Lord has anointed you king of Israel. This is really hard for me to process as a leader. Because I think, man, my insecurity sometimes as a leader speaks much louder. I snap at people. I become insecure. I look for somebody else to affirm me. I'm constantly trying to people please. When I live out of my insecurity, when I lead out of my insecurity, when I love out of my insecurity, man, I'm never the leader or the father or the husband that I need to be, that I want to be, because insecurity is the loudest voice. I love what Craig Groeschel says about leadership. This is so powerful and useful, especially if you're a leader of any kind. He says you can't lead people if you need people. That doesn't mean can't lead people if you don't care about people. Just saying, if you need the approval of people, then your leading of people is not going to work out well. And I bet any of you who lead people, right? You're a team leader, or you lead a business, or you work hard to lead some sort of effort or some sort of directive in your life. You've recognized the times that you've led out of the need for people's approval have not gone really well. When you need people, you can't lead people. Such a powerful phrase. That one's kind of a free. But I just want you to understand something. Just like in Saul's life and in my life, insecurity is a big deal. Insecurity is a really big deal. It's costing you, right? It's not like it's free. It's costing you life. It's defaming you. It's discouraging you. It's costing you. So it is a big deal. You got to work on it, right? We've got to talk about this insecurity thing. It's not just costing you, right? It's distracting you. You know that what you should do, like Saul does, like I know I should obey, but the voice of these people are so loud, and his insecurity speaks louder than God's voice. It's distracting him from his leadership. Where's it distracting you? Is it distracting you from your marriage? Is it distracting you in your parenting, where you got to be their buddy instead of their parent? Is it distracting you at work? Is it distracting you in your dating life? Where's it distracting you in your life? Where is your insecurity speaking louder than the other voices that should be healthier voices in our heads? It's not just distracting you and costing you, it's robbing you. It's robbing you of the potential that God has placed in you. It did for Saul, right? God placed Saul. He allowed Saul to be placed as the king of his chosen people. If Saul could have possibly just said, I don't want to listen to my insecure voices, God, I want to listen to your voice, then he could have lived up to the most amazing picture of who God had for him. If he said, listen, I know that you don't want us to have a king, but I want you to be the king's king. I want you to be the king of this king, right? If he could have done that, it would have been powerful and amazing. And we wouldn't have David's story, because Saul would have been the king that honored God and followed him. But because of this story, it robbed Saul. It distracted Saul. It cost Saul everything. In fact, because of this moment, God rejected Saul as king. Same thing's true of our life. It is sucking life out of our lives. Our insecurity may speak and may be the loudest voice that some of us hear. There are some things that we should do about that, though, aren't there? I was just thinking, like, there are some don't do's when it comes to insecurity, right? There are some don't do's, and I think some of these things are helpful for me to get. Don't do this. Don't pretend it's not real. Don't just go, oh, it's no big deal. I'm not worried about it. Don't sidestep it. Be honest about it. Don't just deal with the surface emotion. You know how we just tend to kind of go, oh, I just feel insecure, so I'm just going to deal with just the feeling, right? I've got to do more than that. Don't just do that. These are my story, by the way. I'm just telling you, these are the traps that I've run into when my insecurity speaks loud. Don't pretend it's not real. Don't just deal with the surface emotion. Don't fake it. That's what I tend to do. I tend to fake it. It's not helpful. Don't isolate, push away from people. That's our reaction speaking. Don't isolate, and don't let your mind spiral. Isn't that how it is, man? It's just a trap that just, insecurity just goes worse and worse. They're talking about me. I'm doing this. I'm such a loser. It just goes down and down. Those are the things I tend to do. Don't make everything about you. It all becomes, everything just kind of settles in on how I feel and how I think. And when I feel insecure, I become the only thing that I care about in the room. When I choose to be healthier, that's not the case. How about this? Don't try to handle it all alone. Those are the don't do's. Probably the most common things in my life are the don't do's. I don't know how your life works, but my life tends to be the natural or easiest thing to do is the don't do list. And yes, I called it the don't do list so that I could say these are the do lists. And the do-dos of insecurity, I had to make a joke somewhere, right? And potty humor is always awesome. But instead of pretending it's not real, what if we named it, honestly? Instead of just avoiding it, what if you just said, you know what, I'm not going to just ignore it. I'm going to say, that's my insecurity. I'm just going to tell myself, I'm speaking out of my insecurity. What if I name it honestly? And how about this? Instead of just dealing with the surface emotion, ask yourself what you're protecting. Instead of just going, hey, I'm just going to deal with how I feel in this moment and react and get angry or defensive or withdraw or whatever you do, right? Instead of leaning into the perfectionism, what if you just said, what am I protecting? Am I protecting how I feel about this? And instead of faking it, what if I chose authenticity over image? What if I just was honest, right? I named it and said, I'm operating out of my insecurity. What if I said, I'm protecting myself instead of trusting? What if you just told somebody that I'm feeling really insecure here. I'm feeling like I'm an outsider. I feel like you guys think I don't have what it takes. I feel like this is something that is scary for me. What if you're honest with people? What could possibly happen? I mean, how many people would really manipulate that in you? It's amazing how often your authenticity and not faking it invites people into their compassion and kindness. Choose authenticity over image. And talk honestly with people who you trust to tell you the truth, right? Talk honestly with people who will be honest with you. Say, listen, can I be honest with you? I want to run away right now. I want to remove myself because I feel insufficient, like I'm not enough in this. But would you tell me, like, what can you really be honest? Not looking for them to approve of you, right? Not like Gideon, right? Who just kept going back to God. Can you just affirm my calling? Can you affirm my calling? Kept putting out the sheep's the fleece, but going. Can you just really be honest with me? Where are my strengths and weaknesses here? Can you help me? I want to work on my weaknesses, lean into my strengths, right? What can we do to do that? Speak open and honestly with people who will be honest with you. Don't let your mind spiral. Don't let your mind spiral. Interrupt the loop. You know what happens in our lives? We tend to kind of start negative thought trains that carry us down this loop going, hey, stop the loop. Name it honestly. Ask what you're protecting. Be honest. Do something that doesn't just have one thought lead to the next thought. Interrupt the loop and claim that space. And that might be the most important part of it, is that you shift the focus. Stop thinking about this thing going, hey, listen, I'm not going to operate out of my insecurity. And instead of making everything about me, I'm going to say, listen, how can we be focused together on what the project or the task or the thing that I feel insecure about at hand? Shift the focus. And this is the critical, most important part of it all. It would have radically changed Saul's story. It would radically change my story. It would change the way you and I lead and love and live if we would do this. Instead of trying to handle it alone, invite God into it. Invite God into your insecurity. What would happen in Saul's story? What would happen in my story? What would happen in your story if instead of living out of insecurity, we instead invited God into it? What if we just said, God, at this one moment, in this relationship, and that way, in this location, in this part of my life or story, wherever it is, God, I feel like I don't have what it takes, and I know that you do. I've told you before, I love this phrase from AA. It's such a valuable phrase. I can't. He can. I think I'll let him. I can't. He can. I think I'll let him. I live that phrase all the time. I mean, it's constantly looping in my brain. I can't. He can. I think I'll let him. So when you feel less than, I can't. He can. I'm just going to invite him into it. I think I'll let him. I think I'll just let him right now speak louder to me than my insecurity does. Your insecurity is an effort by our enemy to steal and kill and destroy. And when we invite God into it, Jesus gets the opportunity to give us a rich and satisfying life that's found when we listen more to him than the voices that scream in our brains. I can't. He can. I think I'll let him.